Usually I'm not nervous, but actually I'm pretty nervous right now because you know the wires are pretty new and they didn't work, and the sound we got installed yesterday. Welcome to Factory 300, home to Startup Excellence. Hopefully we will have a lot of those meetups and Plauscherls like this. We will have a lot of events in the next couple of days. So on Friday and Saturday we will host the first Startup Live Linz. So the first Startup Live event we ever have in Linz. It will be an event where we will have about 100 attendees, and they come together for building teams and pitch their ideas, and will work hopefully for at least 24 hours, and we'll have a pitch event in the evening on Saturday. And this will be the first ever Austrian Startups Stammtisch in Austria in Linz, also at Factory 300. And then we have on Monday a visit from our Chancellor, still Chancellor, Christian Kern, and he will join us for our grand opening of the Factory 300. So my name is Michael Eisler. I'm one of the co-founders of Startup 300. Startup 300 is a business angel network. We have about 120 shareholders. I think you might know some of them. Michael Altrichter is well known from 2 Minuten, 2 Millionen. Hansi Hansmann, the founders of Rentastic, the founders of Karriere.at, and about 100 more. We have about 28 startup investments at the moment. We not only invest money, we also invest sweat. Sweat means we work for our startups like a co-founder. So enjoy the evening. If you need anything, any troubles, don't call me, and I will be here later on, and we'll have some beers with you. So this is Factory 300, a place where you can join us for events, for working, networking, and also for education. Thanks.
Welcome from us organizers as well for the second edition of this year's VR Plauscherl. As you might see or might have seen, we have a live stream today. So, Michael, you have been live. Woo! I'm quite sure the Chancellor is watching. So yeah. Special thanks goes to Markus Klein from Readworks, who is doing the live streaming for us. And another special thanks to Factory 300, Startup 300 for the really great location. And third special thanks to the well-known company Liwest, who is a food and drink sponsor for this Plauscherl. And who has also a very interesting talk prepared. Maybe not the talk, but maybe something to start the discussion in the group, namely how or if VR can be a sustainable business model for a cable TV provider and or broadband operator. Okay, then I think you are next.
Also very warm welcome from me. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a lookout what we have planned moving forward. So we will for sure have another Plauscherl in September, and we might do one in between. So we're thinking maybe of a summer Plauscherl with maybe some after Plauscherl grilling and beer drinking outside, since this is super nice here in the Republic. And as a little teaser, we have 2 talks planned for the next Plauscherls. So as you know, we are trying to really incorporate different types of talks from technology, education, culture. And we have one coming from education, which I am really excited about. It's from Hotel Spenderklasse in Vienna. It's 5 students there that did a VR experience for with the Pensionistenverband Wien. So they interviewed a couple of senior citizens, tried to build an experience for them that they obviously have never experienced before. So focus on non-technical people, and they built a pretty amazing experience. So we'll try to have them here, including maybe also a short talk from someone from the school directly. The second talk will be from a company from Graz, Evolaris. They have a couple of products out actually in the VR space, and that will also contain a demo session with a couple of not so well-known VR glasses, and yeah, I think pretty interesting stuff. And please, if you have any other suggestions for talks, let us know. We are always interested, and I'm sure we can squeeze you in. And with that, I would like to hand over to Philip, who is going to give our kickoff talk, and then yeah, have fun.
Für den Stream auch. Also den anstecken und da reinrennen.
Kann man den Computer noch? Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the introduction. Warm welcome from Liwest. My name is Philip. I'm responsible for product management and corporate communication within our company. And well, I'm honored to talk about VR tonight with you, which is somehow a challenge for me because, to be honest, I guess you're the more experienced guys with this topic than we are. But I hope that we can share some thoughts about it, and we can get some ideas how VR could be some input for companies like Liwestis, like cable operators. But first of all, let me introduce our company quickly. We are the leading cable network provider for Upper Austria, headquartered in Linz, owned by the local energy supplier Linz AG and the energy supplier of the city of Wels. We also own two other networks called ASAC and Multimedia One. We do have a little bit more than 130,000 customers at the moment and homes passed of 228,000, servicing the products of classic linear TV, of broadband internet, phone, service products, and as well, just started last October, a mobile phone service. So what does VR mean for a cable operator? First of all, it means a big challenge and a high demand on our broadband network, for sure. We noticed a big increase on bandwidth within the last few years caused by the well-known OTT services like Netflix, like Amazon, like Maxdome, all the brands we all know very well. Those OTT services caused some switch from the classic linear TV from our DVB-C portfolio, which is well organized and directly transferred to our customer, to our internet services. And therefore we are talking about SD, HD and UHD content, which is pretty well calculatable for us. VR will be the next step and the next demand on our bandwidth. Much higher bandwidth is demanded by this technology. And to be honest, at the moment, we don't even know how this technology will be adopted by the mass market outside there. Additionally, it's another technology where cable operators have to think if it's, or if it could be, a new business case for them in going deeper into the topic of content generation and content production. A lot of cable operators had the same topic a few years ago when it came to the market entries of the OTT brands I just mentioned before. The big challenge here was that the cable operators of the size of Liwest, or a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, did not have the real size to make a business case out of it. So they were just, open up their networks for such services. And the big question is if it's coming to VR, in this case, the same way like it did with the OTT services before. So, combined to that, those are the big challenges for sure for networks like VR. We do have for sure also chances with this technology, especially strong networks like Liwest. And I'm somehow proud to tell you this, that we are probably the strongest internet network within Austria, proven by one worldwide famous OTT services. Means that we seem to be well prepared for such high demands on our bandwidth. And the big topic for us is to tell this to our customers, that if they're focusing and trying to get some VR content, they have to or should choose the right network for their content generation. The chances, as well as I mentioned, is if there is a new business model within this topic, it's a big chance for us to move into. I think, in my point of view, VR could be a topic, especially for local content, for very local content, where you can highly go into quality of delivering local content like museums, like sports events, like concerts to the home of our customers, which wasn't possible before. And as a cable operator, which is owned by a local energy supplier, which is owned by the city of Linz, you have easy access to some local sites and stuff. Maybe other companies don't have that easily. So finally, there's one big question in the field for us, and this question is caused by a development a few years ago. There was the introduction of the technology of 3D for linear TV, especially for linear TV, but also for on-demand TV, which was, first of all, the big technology waiting for all of us to introduce into the TV market and to show our customers how good the networks are and how good the products are and how exciting TV in the Euro 2010 is. And at the end, to be honest, the users didn't accept it at home, because that was one big thing, and that could be one big challenge for VR in my point of view. Customers are used to somehow a lean back mode at home. Yeah? So when people come home and watch some TV or watch some on-demand service, they just want to lean back, sit on the couch and watch their content. And the big challenge is always to put on glasses, to put on some stuff to get some more content. And I think this will be somehow a similar challenge for VR than we had for 3D in the past. But the chance for VR is the much higher experience you can get with this technology than you had with 3D in the past. So this was my short chat, my short talk about VR. I know it was pretty limited on content and on knowledge at the moment right now, but this shows that we are also very at the beginning with this topic. But I hope so that we can chat a little bit afterwards and get some ideas about this stuff, as honestly we're pretty interested in it. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
So, do we have any questions of the audience to Liwest, or maybe we can start a small discussion about what VR will change for a cable TV operator or a internet service provider. Are there any questions in the audience?
I can yell really loud too.
Very good.
Basically, one field that I think that could be interesting is 360-degree video. particularly of events like concerts.
Yeah.
You mentioned sort of local cooperations that, I don't know, there's no Linz Fest this year, but if there were a Linz Fest, having a production team that could do a 360-degree video of the concert. And I'm a musician, I only want to watch the drummer, and if I can do that with 360-degree video, that's awesome. Are there any plans to do something like that? Partnering with maybe a production studio to do sort of local events, sort of the full experience, something along those lines?
Well, not in a short-term view, to be honest, but this is some idea we want to think about it for the next steps. This could be the first step for us to go into the topic of VR. As I mentioned before, local content, local concerts, local events, local sports events as well are relevant for our customers. Yeah, are probably most relevant for our customers and are the field where we can compete with international suppliers and with international providers for content. Yes, that could be a topic, but honestly not in a short-term view. Yeah.
Maybe I would like to add a question to this. For me, VR is always a place where you can beam people into, let's put it this way, very simply. So what I could imagine in such a case, there is a local concert of a favorite band of mine, but I don't have the time nor I'm in the right place. Maybe I'm in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Munich, I don't know where. But I could virtually meet up with my friends, joining the local event and not only watching the drama, but also maybe watching my friends that are sitting at home or sitting in another place, so we can enjoy this concert together.
Yes, I'm definitely completely with you. I think that's an experience topic. Yeah, no matter where you are and when you want to get it, because I think also on demand could be a topic here, especially for concerts. You don't have to get it live. Yeah, live is of course the better experience when you want to get it together with your friends and with your colleagues for sure. But I think concerts and sports events are probably the most relevant and the most experienced or most relevant things for experience. For our customers, for sure, yeah. I think it's the first step to go into this field. Secondly, for sure, there's also the topic of virtual gaming, which is probably not our field where we should go into, because there are other companies who are much better in this topic, but where I see some high demand on our bandwidth and network as well, yeah.
Is Liwest already producing content in 2D?
You mean regular content, non-VR content? You mean regular content or standard content? No, not at the moment.
You're a cable provider.
Yes.
You produce those stuff, so you're thinking about going into producing VR content? That's strange.
Well, VR could be a case to go into the content production and content creation. Yeah. At the moment, we're not producing content. We do run our own TV channel, which is more or less just for information for our customers. Yeah. But that's no real content at the moment. But as we see within the markets all over the world, cable operators go into this field of content creation and production. Yes.
That's crazy.
Well, it's
Leave that to professionals. Don't.
No, you don't have to be the professional. You can work together with the professionals in this case. Yeah.
Build it for you.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So from my point of view, not a technological question, more an organizational question. I'm interested in how many people are involved in this topic at Liwest. Is it only you? And how does the C-level think about this topic? Is it really a very important topic for your CEO or for all the others on the top management, or is it just a fun theme or something? What do you think about it?
Well, we're in the glad situation that this topic is a topic where we can think very free, where we can think if something comes to our mind and if a chance is developing, we want to catch it, and if not, it's not a problem. So it's in the mind of our CEO as well, and it's in the mind of some leading persons within our company. And as I mentioned before, I'm responsible for product management, so it's more or less within our innovation topics as well. but we see it pretty relaxed at the moment. That's a good thing in my point of view, because we don't have the pressure to launch anything in the market. So we can think about a good solution, a good chance, if there might some good content and stuff for our customers. Okay, let's try it. If not, then it's no big deal. Yeah. Okay.
But you might lose kind of a little bit out if you kind of wait very long. So in the US, the New York Times actually has a 360 weekly, so they add just 3D content once a week. And if you kind of, in a way, have a foot somewhere in the content production, you could start something small and then get the data to see how scalability would actually work. Because I think you wouldn't even have to worry about bandwidth in the beginning. So if you can provide low latency, you would probably be already ahead of your competition. Because the really annoying thing when you watch 3D content is that it usually takes a minute before you can actually start watching, which is super annoying when you actually look at news. So if you had a channel where it would be just one thing once a week, maybe you could already see is there a demand or is not, and you wouldn't lose much if there isn't.
Yeah, you're right. That could be a good case to test it and to move slowly into the market.
You can give out some cardboards or so.
Yes, we already did this. When we launched our mobile phone service last October, we had some promotion where the first 1,000 customers of our mobile phone service got, well, let's say some kind of cardboard for free, to develop them somehow into this field of VR. So this was the first catch of attention in this topic, yes, you're right. The good thing about OTT services, and I see VR as an OTT service for sure, is that you can easily try new things without moving a lot within your field of your network. You know, trying out something in the classic linear TV always causes a lot of well, let's say feedback from our customers, because every change within the linear TV setup changes a lot for the customers at home. If we just offer a new service on an OTT platform, well, it's available or not, and customers use it or not. I'm completely with you,
Please forgive me, but what is the OTT?
I'm sorry, that's our typical branch term. OTT is an over-the-top service. For example, Netflix is an OTT service, Amazon Prime is an OTT service, also Spotify is an OTT service. So where content comes to the customer just through the internet without needing classic linear content like classic TV or classic radio.
I'm sorry if this was maybe in your talk, but what benefit for the company would you realize from these virtual reality endeavors? Would you see it as advertisement for the company or as exclusive content for your own subscribers? Because if you have a local event like a concert, and I'm going there with my friends from Linz, but I'm currently in, let's say, England, and of course, I don't know, Liwest is probably not present in England.
No,
so
for sure.
If I'm in England, I can't access the concerts through Liwest. So if I want to be at your concert collectively with my friend from South Africa and USA and Australia, we can't connect over Liwest if it's exclusive to the customers.
Sure. Well, probably it's a chance for Liwest to go abroad. Those topics can be a big chance for a company like Liwest to move out of your own network, to offer content, to offer services that are not bounded to your own network, to move into new fields for sure. Everything is possible here.
I mean, a big leap would probably be to go really and kind of hosting 3D cloud power. So there's kind of getting started to see actually games playable on a very low-end device, and if the latency of the network is low enough to actually host the graphic cards somewhere in the cloud, especially as you're a local company, I think you could get really good latency. I guess that would be an enormous investment in research and kind of building up, virtual
I don't know numbers.
Low-end devices, but you could make people consume content on a very cheap cardboard-like device.
To get it on a low entry level.
And that would be definitely something you could show off to a research-oriented community, but I think also high risk, so you might want to partner with some universities to do that.
Well, I take this idea with me for sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we have Philipp Langebner from Amago, who is telling us something about drone-mounted VR. Drone.
Who knows?
Who knows?
We will see.
We're excited.
Der var før HDMI, altså det er dobbelt af, okay. Best.
Cool. Hi, everybody, and thanks for the introduction. Actually, I might have some points to pick up from that discussion and from the talk. First of which is, my name is also Philip, as you already heard. Plus, we, guys, moving to the buffet already, but we are a video production company and we do produce 360-degree videos. So talking about concerts in Linz and stuff like that, well, we're up for that, if you want. Also in direction of Liwest, if you want, of course. Okay, so I was asked to give a talk about drone-mounted VR, although I don't really know if it's called that way, but we're in the middle of a project that deals with that topic. And so Christoph asked me if I could tell you a little bit about this project. So first of all, who are we? We are Amago, a video production company in Linz. We do a lot of corporate films, we do some motion graphics, animation, explainer videos, and of course, as I already said, we do 360-degree VR productions. And we are actually located quite close to where we are today, because this is, as most of you probably know, the Pargfrieder. And right now, I don't want to drag the microphone down, but right now we are around here, and this is where we are, so just across the square outside. Okay, drone-mounted VR. What is that actually? Well, basically it's just a 360-degree camera system mounted on a drone. But we did a little more than just like getting some gaffer tape and taping, taking a drone and taping a 360-degree system to it. Sounds quite easy, but it's actually not. And actually I put some memes in this talk, so if you're not into that, that is probably your last chance to leave the room now, because there's a couple of them. Okay, about that project, there's another meme coming up actually, because the main question would be, why would we actually do that? Well, about a year ago, a project popped up that talked about a VR experience of the Danube River. As you know, the Danube River flows through Linz and many other cities. And we were talking about flying a drone over the Danube River and mounting a VR system to it, a 360-degree system actually, for actually multiple use cases, one of which could be touristic, like if tourists come to Linz and they could like watch a flight over the city in VR. And the other point of that project was merging the video content with layover data. But that data could be anything. It could be like touristic information, like highlights of the city, whatever. There wasn't that much clear at this point, but we found it quite interesting, so we went for it actually, and plus there was some federal funding that we could apply for, so we said, okay, why not invest some time into that and see what comes out of it. Okay, before I move on further with that project, I do have to say that this project started about 3/4 of a year ago, but is still in research phase, and we don't have final results right now, and what you see today is just really a sneak peek of where we are today. So I'm just telling you right now, it's not like totally final. If you want to fly a drone in Austria, and if you want to mount anything on it, there are a couple of considerations that we went into. First of all, aviation laws. I know that there's guys in this room that know much more about aviation laws than I do, for example Markus here. But we in our video production do have a drone as well, and so we're a little bit into that topic as well. They are quite strict in Austria, which is, in my point of view, a really good thing. The problem with that is that a lot of people don't know about them or just don't care and fly drones everywhere. You can't actually do that, or you shouldn't. Especially when it comes to bigger drones, because the small ones that we saw, that was a Phantom actually, they're nice and they produce nice like full HD video or maybe even 4K, but you can't mount like a whole 360-degree rig onto that because of the weight, obviously. So depending on the weight and where you actually want to go with that thing and what you actually want to film with it, there are a couple of considerations. And also different parts of the aviation law apply to that drones. So it's a little bit more complex than just taking a drone and flying it over the Danube. Like talking about aviation laws, we could do probably another talk for around a week, probably. So if you want to know more about that, talk about it in the discussion or ask Markus, because he's really a pro on that. Okay. So, further considerations, apart from aviation laws, of course, technical ones, namely, which cameras did we want to use, how would we actually rig them, and which drone can we rig them on and put them on. What you see here is a DJI Phantom. Of course, we have one of those, but that's not big enough to carry a 360-degree system. And what you see here is a GoPro Omni rig. Probably a lot of you know that by now. When we started the project, we knew that this was coming up, but it wasn't out on the market yet, so we couldn't really use it. We talked about which cameras to use, and we already had 6 GoPro Hero 4 Plex, I think they are, and what we also already had was a Freedom 360 rig. So naturally, that was what we tried to use. We started our first tests using that one. We actually had to adapt it to be mounted upside down, because this one is actually like by default put that way, but we wanted it to mount it upside down for the drone, of course, so we had to adapt it a little with a 3D printer. But we quite quickly found that like the angles of the camera and how they are mounted in that rig aren't like at all what we're looking for filming with the drone. So it was pretty soon that we decided not to go with that rig. Further considerations, I mean, there were a lot of them. When we started that, it was winter and we wanted to fly over the Danube River with a nice city in the background and nice green nature. So naturally we couldn't do it in winter, but that gave us some time for development. So we had a couple of months before like nature started to turn green, and we had time to develop the system. We talked about the flight path, where do we actually want to fly this thing and how long, how big are the distances. We talked about duration of the flight, of course, because that's limited due to the weight of the drone and the batteries, but also how long is this final video actually going to be so somebody actually watches it and isn't bored by it. There was some of the other considerations, and then after we did about 2 months of development, we started our first test flight in Linz with a 3D printed rig. that you see here in quite a small picture, but I hope you can see it. We had one camera facing down instead of them facing all around, because we actually didn't want any of them facing too much up, because there's only the drone and the sky. So we, as I said, 3D printed a rig and mounted it on, in this case, a hexacopter that has a takeoff weight of below 5 kilos, which is actually quite important, again, aviation laws. Next up, there's a really quick clip about that first test flight, just so you can see that this thing actually flies. Okay, really short, as I said. So most of you, or at least people from Linz, can tell that we flew that thing quite close to the Ars Electronica Center. And right now I just want to, I hope it works, but I want to give you a short, I have to leave the presentation for that, a short example of what we did here. If I take my VR player. Should be fine. Yeah. Okay. So this is the flight that we did. It's actually 6K resolution in total in this. I think. Am I right, Alex? Yeah. Okay. 6K resolution, but 6K in VR, of course, means it's not 6K in any direction you look at, but the whole video is 6K, and then whichever direction you look at, it's almost down to about full HD, something like that. So this is just some impressions from our first test flight. Going back. Okay, after that, of course, post-production. So we flew across the Danube River, had a lot of material, a lot of footage, and had to go into post-production naturally. And we found some points that we actually took into consideration for further developing that thing. First of which, frame sync for cameras can be a challenge. Of course, sync is always a challenge, even in normal productions with normal cameras, with multiple cameras. But you have 6 cameras, and they're not intercut like you would like in a normal video, but they are stitched, of course, to a whole VR video. So they need to be perfectly in sync. But mounted on that drone, you can't start them all at once. And we found that even shooting in 50 frames per second might not be enough to perfectly sync them, because we had some sub-frame sync-lessness, more or less. So we're not really sure why, but we found that we actually have to go up to about 80 frames per second to guarantee that we can perfectly sync them. There's another meme coming up. So actually GoPro doesn't allow any kind of input in terms of channel lock, so you could actually sync them and start them all at once. Would be cool. Of course, there are some small, like the IndyCam, that can do that, but to be honest, we didn't have that kind of money to buy like 6 cameras with 10,000 euros a piece. So we went with the GoPros, and they are hard to sync. Point made. Next one. Sun and clouds are important factors. Now, that's not big news. Of course, sun and clouds are important factors. Again, even if you like shoot with a normal camera. But in this case, of course, if you do VR outside, 360 video outside, somewhere the sun is going to be. We didn't have one camera facing up, we had one facing down. So we tried to fly at times of the day when the sun was very far up. Because if the sun directly shines into one of those cameras or one of those lenses, of course GoPros autocorrect the exposure. Plus you get a lot of nasty lens flares that sometimes, like if you're Roland Emmerich, you would want to have, but you wouldn't want to have them in a VR video. And the next thing is clouds are important because as you saw, the rig was mounted beneath the drone. And we replaced the drone with blue sky, which is not a hard thing if it's a perfectly blue sky, but it is a hard thing if there's a couple of clouds around. So you would have to like model all the clouds. So just saying those are important factors to keep in mind. And another one is speed limitations for the drone, because of course drones can go slower, faster, whatever. But when a drone picks up speed, of course there's some inclination as it goes that way, just like a helicopter does. And that means that the rotors on one side come further down and move further into the picture, which means you actually have to cut away a lot more of the picture when you actually stitch it and don't want to have like rotors in the picture. So that was what we found in Post-Pro part 1. And further considerations after that first test flight and first stitching, we actually wanted to increase the distance between the drone and the rig, just for the effect to make the drone smaller in the image. The further away, and with wide angle lenses it goes quite quick, so you just need like maybe 50 centimeters and the drone gets quite smaller, which helps us in stitching. Also, we found that we had a lot of micro vibrations from the drone, just from the motors. And what we found was what's actually a good flying altitude to do that kind of videos and still get the impression of the city. Because if you go too high up, it's just like Google Earth, really. And you wouldn't need to, if there's just flat ground down there and only sky all around, there's no need for a VR video actually. So bringing, like increasing the distance between drone and rig, we had some funny ideas as well. Because how would you do that? Not to like crash the rig when you land the drone, or also when you start it. We were thinking about like a takeoff pod that looks something like that. We found another solution, probably now, I can't tell you right now because we're testing it. That wasn't the solution that we went with actually. Okay, coming up our recent test flight that we didn't do in Linz, but at the Schlögener Schlinge in, maybe a lot of you know that, the Danube River does like 2 really tight turns, and it's a natural hotspot, touristic hotspot that a lot of people go to. And since we have a use case of using that in tourism, we thought of doing it actually there. What did we do? We had our 3D printed rig adapted. We built in like own developed gimbal to stabilize the drone further. As I said, we had some micro vibrations in that. We had a central power supply for the GoPros instead of running each GoPro on its own battery, which helped bringing the gravity of the whole system more to the center. And we found that with that configuration, we have a net flight time of about 6 minutes. But that's 6 minutes flying in the air and filming. The drone of that size and in a height of about 100-120 meters that we flew it in needs around a minute to come down again, because you can't bring it and land it really quickly, otherwise it like crashes in its own air turbulence. So you need to bring it down really slowly. That's why we have, I mean, the real flight time is probably about 9 minutes, but you always want to have some backup and you need at least a minute to go up and bring it down again. So next one is a short clip again. It's really bad quality. It's from my smartphone. But when we flew that thing, we were quite busy flying it. So sorry for that. I just want to show you that it actually flies. Okay, I think you get the impression. Just to see that this thing is not just like photoshopped or anything, it flies. And it went quite well actually. So we went into Post-Pro again, of course, sync and stitching again, worked much better this time. After that we had a lot of 3D motion tracking going on, because of course we wanted to implement this layover data, and for doing that and positioning the hotspots in the image correctly, you need to 3D motion track the image. And maybe a lot of you know about 3D motion tracking. If you do it with a 2D image, it's a lot of time and a lot of work. If you do it with 6 images stitched to a 360-degree video, it's more. Well, there are a lot of tracking points in there that you need to clean and like correct. And then another point that we found was the actual playback of the final video can be much higher than we can fly the drone. So actually the playback right now is about 3 times of normal speed, just because there's not so much happening on the Danube River. It's just some boats going around. So for having a lot of fun and actually enjoying watching it, you need to play it back a little quicker than normal. And that is about it. Right now, I think there's a break coming up, and we have set up a demo system outside over there, and you can have a look through the glasses of what we actually filmed in Schlögen. I don't have it up here because it's not completely final, but we have our recent version out there on the system. So feel free to ask any questions. Just not me, because as you've seen, I don't know so much about it. But I brought my colleague Alex, who did all the stitching and post-pro, so he would probably know about it. Of course, you can ask me as well. So questions, please. Anybody? Or not? I mean, there's a break coming up, and you can like have a go for yourself outside. Feel free to do it. And of course, I'm here, so whoever wants to talk about anything, anytime. No questions asked. Okay, that's cool.
Philip, thank you very much for your very interesting talk. I personally learned a lot now about
memes.
About memes, obviously, and about the challenges of drone-mounted VR. Thanks.
I'm not really sure it's called that way. It's just what we call it, because I don't think there is a name for it yet. But
well, that's good. If there is not a name for it yet, maybe somebody would like to invest in it. Let's see. So.
Okay,
cool, thanks.
thank you.
We would now have, are you very hungry, thirsty? We would now have like a short break of 15 minutes maybe, and then 15 to 20 minutes, and then we head over to the next talk, which is about storytelling in VR. And yeah, thanks.
Das ist jetzt schon drauf. Das ist schon drauf. Ich hoffe, das Video ist einfach. Jetzt habe ich noch schnell ans Ende da.
Okay, so I'm very happy that we have here our third guest, Markus Pargfrieder from Responsive Spaces, who will tell us something about storytelling in VR. Thank you, Markus.
So hi everybody. The English talking guys are still here, so we stick to English, right? Yeah, okay, I gather, yeah. So yeah, thanks again for the invite, Christoph. I know Christoph for 2.5 years now. We met as a client-agency relationship thing, and somehow luckily it changed a little bit, and now we're more like befriended companies. Yeah, I'm here to talk about storytelling in VR. I think the guys who were here last time for VR Plauscherl #1, Christoph, I think, showed the Dominate experience. That was the first real commercial project that I did in VR, and since then, of course, the technology evolved a little bit. But what evolved more was everybody producing VR, in thinking VR, working the VR, getting to know the tangibles and the limitations of VR. And that's what I at least try to focus a little bit on in the next, let's say, 20 minutes. Since everybody was presenting a little bit the company he's here for, I took the video that I got from my friends from Amago and put it in just like a minute ago. So that's like the advertising for 20 seconds, and then I'm off to storytelling. Responsive Spaces is a spin-off of Nettoral. That's the agency that works together with Amago on the Donau 2.0 project. It's a digital agency that does everything. Okay, what's digital? And we, with Responsive Spaces, I moved out from Nettoral now, and we just do really digital, basically everything combined with space. That's where the name comes from. So that was the advertising part. Back to storytelling, and you guys probably might say, and it's meme-like what I'm doing, I'm working a lot with images, just to be warned. Storytelling is like this, yeah, it's a little bit bullshit bingo from the past. Storytelling is one of these overused terms, and now with VR it's coming back again, and I'm sorry for that, but it basically is what it is. It's at the end of the day, even in VR, it's not about the technology, at least to my mind. Of course, VR got on the map now because of that leap that basically started with Oculus. And now, as you can see, just the mobile devices are basically uncountable, and the desktop devices also. There's a lot of VR devices out there that are now basically in the public appearance, and everybody knows about them. If you look a little bit closer, it's been around, I don't know, 30 years already. This was 1990. That thing, the fake space boom, I don't know if anybody knows it. It was not really affordable for everybody because it costed $95,000. But besides that, and the fact that it had mechanical tracking, it was almost a copy of the Oculus Rift DK1. It had the same resolution, it had the same weight, it had the same, basically the same capabilities. Just a little bit older and really a lot more expensive, and that was basically the main difference. So VR as a concept is not new at all. The affordable devices are, and that's why stuff like this here now is happening all over the world, that VR is on the map and everybody is talking about it. So frankly speaking, we are already experienced in VR, and with we I mean everybody who's producing VR. It's not a new concept at all, but we still call it like new rules that were introduced with VR. That image here is chosen out of a reason. I don't know if anybody has seen The Revenant. I guess so, because it was a quite good movie. And this shot here is the one and only shot in the whole movie that is done with artificial light. And that was just the reason that the wind was blowing so hard that the campfire was moving too much, so they couldn't really film that scene. Besides this very particular scene, the whole movie is shot 100% with natural light. And that's the reason why I chose this thing, because new rules apply in VR. If you film, for instance, a 360-degree video, you can't put any artificial light behind the camera because there is no behind the camera. And that's just an example for new rules. There are new rules technically, there are new rules in storytelling. And I want to focus now a little bit on the new rules and what changed in storytelling, because the technical aspects, as the technical devices keep changing, keep evolving. Just the guys from Amago will tell you that, like the 360 rig a year ago, now, and probably available in 6 months, changed the game in terms of producing, but it doesn't change the game in terms of consuming the content. So everybody knows this face. That's by now somehow the typical VR face. It's that looking up a little bit and this gesture, whatever it is. The main reason why people are astonished by VR at the end of the day is, again, not the technique. It's the story, it's the content that is told. And again, technique to me doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's the acceptance of society or people who use it, and the understanding of the technology and the understanding of the content that is brought to me. At the end of the day, the VR projects that will survive will not be those who technically work okay or good or excellent, but those who really create new stories, new solutions to a problem that really was there and was not just invented to be solved by VR. But that's basically for any innovative technology that's out there. So at the end of the day, the thing that really makes us awe and ah is the narrative, is the story. So the story basically gives you that VR face that we see here. VR, just to go there for a second, just to a little bit into the theoretical part of it, that's the definition that I found on Wikipedia, and basically it says, the first part says, okay, it's a virtual world, and so on and so on. The second part is more interesting. It simulates a physical presence in those virtual worlds, and per definition, it's in there in VR that you can interact with the environment. So that basically, if you take it really like exact, kicks 360 video out of the window. I'm sorry for you guys, but basically that's not really VR. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. VR is what people think VR is. It's not a technical definition or what some university professor thinks it should be. To me, it's whatever people want it to be. So if VR is something like this to people, it's okay. There's a little bit of literature that basically said, okay, let's call it passive VR. So it's VR that's more or less just a movie playing with a wider perspective, because you can turn your head in it. But besides that, it's just a movie or a story going on. And that's okay and that's good. So that example here is what people would basically think of an active VR. There are also a couple of even now fitness devices out there, like the Icarus thing that won the innovation prize 2 years ago on the ISPO in Munich. So there's stuff out there that really gets you active, but it's still not, like there is nothing like active VR. If you have VR, that's really per definition VR, it's interactive VR. So in here you kind of have the thing that you are represented in the world, you interact with the world, and around you stuff is happening. So that's the narrative in a way, and that's the scope where we are working in when we talk about VR. But there's another aspect that's new now with VR, and that's the presence. To really be in a VR experience, you really have to feel the being in it. So it's not just sitting in front of a screen and watching the story, it's really being in the story. So at the end of the day, it's about presence. This definition I stole, so it's not my idea, that it's called the Patrick Swayze effect, but that's a problem basically in VR. You're there, but you're not really there. The walls basically don't really exist, so your mind is there, but your body is not there. And if it's done wrong or in a special way, the environment doesn't really react to you. So that's something to think about every time you do a real VR experience, that there is somebody who's not really there, but he probably should feel like really being there. So at the end of the day, there are a couple of different kinds of VR presence. So if you can build it up in a matrix or something. I didn't do that. But in the most simple one is where VR also started. When the first Oculus came out, everybody was riding roller coasters all over the globe. And it was astonishing and funny and whatever. But at the end of the day, the environment doesn't act like I'm there, because the roller coaster is driving anyway. And I cannot interact with the scene besides looking around, but looking around is not interacting with the scene. So that's basically the most simple presence in VR. The environment doesn't react to me, doesn't know I'm there, and I cannot interact with the environment. The next one is done somehow in configuration tools. That's like the IKEA kitchen planner, I think it's the kitchen. So the environment, again, doesn't act like I'm there because it's an empty scene, it's a configurator. But I can interact with the scene in that scenario. I can change surfaces, I can change objects, whatever. So I can interact with the scene, I can change the world around me. I get a more beneficial effect in VR because I can change quickly, even huge things in VR. So that's the second part. The third one, the environment acts like I'm there, so it's a typical first-person thing. But again, I can't interact with the scene. The movie is again just running. Whatever I do, whatever I do, the video will keep running. Third thing, and then you have basically the Champions League of VR. The environment knows I'm there, it reacts to me, and I can really interact with the environment. So that's basically where we're heading to now with VR games, of course, because all the first-person games, for instance, of course, change to VR. So that's basically the 4 presences, and every time you do a VR project, you have to think, which category am I in? Because all of them are relevant and all of them are okay. But thinking in terms of each and every presence basically changes a little bit how you should approach it conceptually. So what it's all about, it's the balance between the narrative and the presence. And in every project that might be different. Sometimes it's really a lot focusing on the narrative, sometimes it's really focusing on the presence. That really, really depends on the project that you're doing. I chose a goldfish because they have an attention span like, I don't know, 7 seconds or something. And everybody in here who has already experienced VR might recognize that that happens to us if we are in VR as well. We get really caught up in, for instance, if I'm in a VR experience that's really trying to give me the feeling of presence. So things really move close to me. A character who talks to me really gets up to my face, maybe even points with his finger right between my eyes and does stuff. I'm really, really awed by this. I look at this and I'm stunned how the effect works, and it's not. I know it's not real, but it looks so real and whatever. So I really get lost in that feeling of presence and completely forget that there might be a story being told to me. So the narrative completely gets in the background. It's really hard work in VR to follow the narrative if the whole experience is focusing too much on on feeling me or making me feel in there. So it's always a balance between these two things that have really to be leveled out the right way. And I thought about a little bit to give some ground rules for storytelling, and there was somebody who did this already like 2 years ago, 2015. Oculus founded a subgroup, it's the Story Studio. They have a really good blog who is not really fed frequently. They don't do a lot there because maybe they don't talk about everything they find out, but it's a really good read. And 2 years ago they basically came up with a couple of rules that really move into this area of storytelling in VR, and yeah, why not copy from the best and just give you those 5 rules that they came up with. They did an example project, it's called Lost. I looked it up yesterday or the day before. I even wrote Christoph, it's for free at the moment at the Oculus store. I don't know if it stays this way. It's a short film, an animated film. It's a real-time 3D film where they really just experimented a lot. And they, as I said, they came up with 5 main rules to follow for storytelling. The first one is, don't rush the pacing. In modern movie making or film making, the speed got faster and faster. Like if you compare just a blockbuster movie from 2017 or 2016 to like 10 years ago, you'll recognize that the pace of the movie is far faster now because we just got used to it that storytelling happens faster and faster. In VR, you simply cannot do this because you completely will overwhelm the user within the experience because it's happening all around him. So following the narrative, as already mentioned before, is way more work than in a movie. So really, really take your time in telling stories in VR. The second rule they came up with is respect the ritual of settling and setting the scene. Just imagine you go to the movies, there's a ritual that we used to. You go to the cinema, you get your popcorn, you move over to the area where the movie is presented, you sit down, the curtain opens, the light goes down and the movie starts. So our mind and our body really settles in a movie experience. We are ready now to be taken away to a science fiction movie, to a different time, to a different era, to a different place in the world. That's what we humans basically need to really be blown away in a virtual world. And in a way, movies are doing this also, but they are doing it in our brains. So if you do a really VR experience, give the people time to settle in. Give them an establishing shot, give them a scene where nothing or barely something happens, just to make them really calm down and settle in. The Oculus guys simply called it the in. So if you want to work with a term, just call it this. The third rule was, let go of forcing the viewers where to look at. And that's a tough thing to do. Everybody in here already did a virtual reality experience, knows that it's really, really tempting to put in people that pointed somewhere, or to make a noise somewhere, to make people look over there, or even, which is the ugliest version of doing it, inserting arrows into the air that show you, okay, this way, something's going on over there. That's not good storytelling, because that's storytelling like in the old days, that storytelling with a canvas in front of you. I want to control where you look. You sit in the movie, you look in front to the canvas because around you it's dark, nothing is happening. That's not the power of VR. VR has the power to give the story all around you, to put you inside the story. So if you want to tell a story in VR, make use of it. Let the story happen around the user or around the guy who's experiencing it. And then you have to rethink storytelling, because you can't create one narrative that just happens somewhere around you. You have to tell the story a different way. Oculus calls it moments. Create moments that are happening in this virtual environment around you. And if you follow these moments, and even if you miss some because you're looking the other way, you still get the whole story. You get the idea of what the experience is all about. The next rule is be aware of spatial story density. That's what I mentioned. The story has to happen around you. If you sit at home in your couch and you watch the Super Bowl, it's a good experience. If you do it in VR, it could be different, because what you wish for then in VR would be the perspective of the quarterback, or would be the perspective of the running back. You want to be on the field, because then the story, the match, the Super Bowl match, is happening around you. Technically, that's not possible at the moment, but they are working on it. So we're getting there. And the last rule, which is the most technical of those rules, simplify your scope in terms of the complexity of the story, as well as of the complexity of the polygons. That's why I chose the story of Toy Story. Toy Story was a good idea and a good story, but there was a reason why they chose toys as actors in this, because they don't have hair, you can easily control them. It's easy to be done. In 1990, I think it was 5 when they did Toy Story. In VR, everybody already did a VR experience, knows that 90 frames per second on a 1 or 1.5K display twice, because we got 2 eyes, is pretty tough for a computer. So keep the scene simple. It was not possible, by the way, with the yacht. But if you can choose your setting and if you can choose your environment, keep it more simple, and that simple thing make it really look perfect. And again, focus a little bit on, or not just a little bit, really on storytelling, and the experience would be much, much better. Thank you. Questions?
Maybe an add-on, there was a great talk about storytelling in VR by the creators of Job Simulator at the GDC 16, I think. That also goes very much in depth about how they told stories without telling stories.
Yeah, that's the thing. And everybody's experimenting with it at the moment. There are companies out there, like I know from Airbus and Boeing, that they're just trying to reinvent internal video conferencing through VR. And the first step that they again did was, okay, let's try to simulate people sitting in a virtual conference room. Everybody's sitting there and everybody's represented by an avatar, and then they don't have to fly all around the world, and create a more at the end of the day, maybe even more efficient conference situation. But the thing is, in VR, you are not bound to physical limits, for instance. So they are also now experiencing with completely different things to turn this a little bit around and use the power of VR to maybe even get real, not just efficiency out of it, but really maybe even a new form of meeting people. But there's really a lot of things going on. For instance, Second Life now founded a new company that's really focusing on VR. I keep forgetting the name of the new project. But they are also trying to use VR and really mesh it with, I mean, back in the day before it got really ugly and nasty, Second Life was a cool idea at the beginning. And to mesh this with VR could be interesting. There's also a reason why Facebook, for instance, bought Oculus, and it's not because they want to quit social media and social connections and turn to VR. They see a future in joining these things. So there's a lot of fields out there that have something in VR, but it's, to my mind, most of these different branches still haven't figured out where the real power of VR can be for them. I don't know the English for das Buffet ist wieder öffnet, aber obviously it is.
So closing up, if you want to feel like a goldfish, we have two VR experiences. One is just essentially showing Google Earth for anyone that hasn't tried it.